feeling, a great feeling from Jimmy Lakey. Jimmy Lakey in the morning makes me feel alive. Woke me up this morning, now I'm up and on my way. Oh, 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 yeah, what a great way to start your day, the Lakey way.
Well, top of the morning to you. If I were a choir, I would sing about me as well. They should always gather. I hope one day you're so lucky that one day the choirs of angels will sing your name and introduce you to your own radio or television or podcast show. But in the meantime, thank you, Brother Leroy and the Jimmy Lakey Mass Choir for years ago. Blessing my heart with such a fantastic rendition of welcoming Jimmy Lakey waking up in the morning. I think all my friends should have that as a ringtone. And if they don't, they're probably not my friends. At this point, they should have already inquired of that. If I have to come up with the ideas for ringtones that celebrate me on your phone, screw you. You're not my friend. So anyway, you guys are well behind the curve. I'm expecting now a lot of requests and groveling. I'm so sorry, Brother Jimmy. I have not asked for the ringtone to sing in my phone. Well, you should have. Slackers, where you been all my life? All right, good to have you here on the program. It is Tuesday, the 29th day of July. Year of our Lord 2025. Pleasured, pleased, and thrilled to have you here on the show. Wherever you're tuning in from, if you're tuning in live on the streamcast this morning as we go on live on the Facebook, Rumble, YouTube's, X, all sorts of platforms out there. Sound off, all of them. Let us know where you are tuned in from, even live on the Instagram this morning. Just my name. Obnoxious Scott says you're late, and good morning, Jimmy and Chad from Laramie. Hey, Scott, shut the hell up. No, just kidding. You are correct, late. Had a little bit of a trouble with a technical glitch here on the program, and I had producer Chad could probably see me in the studio. I'm kind of pointing my finger, and anyway, we got it all worked out, but here we are a little bit late this morning, but you know what? Absence makes the heart grow fonder. And so I appreciate you now missing me more than ever before. When I'm 2 minutes late on the program, remember the old days you had the television screens that popped up and it would say, television would say, we interrupt this program to bring you a special announcement, but also, please stand by. This station has experienced technical difficulties. Well, we were experiencing technical difficulties here, okay? And because of the technical difficulties, we did start about 2.5 minutes late. But for all of you, please forgive us. Scott, stop judging, okay? Stop judging. Thank you. All right, good to have all of you here. What do we got on the show? Oh, Donald Trump's in the UK. He heads back to Washington, D.C. today. I was telling some friends, and I think one of the most fascinating parts of that trip, he's in the UK, Scotland, which is part of the United Kingdom, to be exact. And usually when he makes a foreign visit, a state visit like that, for negotiations, conversation, he is going to the Royal Palace. He's going to their version of the White House. He's going to the residence or the center of government for wherever he's going. Only President Trump that I can recall is a foreign leader, the leader of the United States, goes to the United Kingdom, and yet he hosts all the meetings because he's a badass. We can say badass. He's a loaded guy, and he's got a house there in Scotland, and so he's there hosting the meetings. And so even the president or prime minister of Scotland, every leader there from the UK and the European Union that are showing up there to praise him for his golf course are having to show up to see Donald Trump. They're showing up and see Donald John Trump Jr. It's just fascinating. It's just really, they're having to see him in person. And I can't think of a time where a foreign leader has gone to a foreign land, but he ends up hosting all the meetings. I thought that was total rock star status. And again, we are the we are the most respected country on the planet, I think, once again right now. And that's good to see. I mean, you don't have to like the orange guy, but it is nice to see people lined up to want to see our president speaking highly of him. Unlike the last 4 years where we had a guy crapping his pants in the Oval Office, crapping his pants when he goes to see the Pope, and demented and surrounded by a bunch of loony bins who were not honest with the American people, and a bunch of loony cult-like followers who said, oh, Joe Biden, he's our guy. Oh, we're supposed to love Kamala now? Kamala Harris, she's our girl. You're a bunch of bootlicking cult members is who you are, and you should really be embarrassed if you had any ability to be shameful at all, but some of you don't. So anyway, I just thought it was fascinating. Donald Trump in a foreign land, but he's still in charge. He's hosting the meetings, and that's the way it ought to be. It's kind of like if I go to producer Chad's house and I say, producer Chad, step right out, welcome back in. I mean, if I took charge like I was the host of this, he was on someone else's foreign soil, and he's out there going, you're coming to my house, and that's where we're going to convene, and we are going to meet. So we can talk about that. This shooting in New York City, a lot is still being learned about the shooting that happened late yesterday afternoon, early evening in New York City. It is seemingly a planned shooting by a gunman who drove out of his mind from Las Vegas, is I think the report that I heard early this morning. The gunman stormed a high-rise building, the heart of New York City, Manhattan. Evidently, his purpose was to get into the NFL headquarters, but he took the wrong elevator bank, according to Mayor Eric Adams, as in a press conference this morning. Adams appeared on Fox 5 New York's Good Day New York and said the gunman, identified as Shane Tamura, accidentally entered the wrong elevator banks. He went to the floor where Rudin Management was located. Rudin Management was located. And Eric Adams said on the Fox television station in New York, says, unfortunately, these things happen during these days and times. Active shooter drills are taking place all across the country, and Rudin Management did their job safely having those active shooter drills. And the staffers who were in the building were able to utilize some of the safe rooms, and I believe it played a great role in saving lives in some of the staffers. Mayor Adams added that the gunman alluded to having suffered from chronic traumatic encephalopathy, which is CTE, and that he had a grievance against the NFL. He seemed to have blamed the NFL headquarters located in the building. He evidently had the chronic traumatic encephalopathy, and for some reason thought it was the NFL's fault. The New York Times, or New York Post, reports that the notion of a suicide note was found near his body. Some people said it was in his back pocket. Fox News Digital reached out to the New York police and NFL for comment. No comment as of yet. Tamura was a high school football player at Granada Hills Charter in Granada Hills, California, about 27 miles northwest of L.A. The New York NFL headquarters are located in the same building. Tamura had killed multiple people, left several others injured, and the league's officers are on the 5th floor. So anyway, we'll continue breaking news on that, but it seems as if this guy was blaming a brain injury, blaming football, saying it's the NFL's fault. NFL Commissioner Roger Goodell sent a message obtained by Fox News to all league employees and saying that this is a traumatic event, and one NFL employee was seriously injured. I've heard mixed reviews on who this employee was. Identity, it's no name that I would recognize, but until I have a firm identity and name, I'm sure they're keeping that under wraps. But I've heard two reports. I've heard one male, one female, but it's one person, so I'm not exactly sure where that goes. So everybody keep the city of New York in your thoughts and prayers. Active shooter drills seem to play out, and we will follow what the motive of this guy was. But evidently, he was strung up into some kind of a vitriolic rage because he thought he had a brain injury. And in having a brain injury, he thought it was the National Football League's fault. We will follow the story and see where it leads throughout the course of the morning and the next couple of days. But that's your breaking news story from New York City. I've got a question about old school stuff. Anybody remember growing up? I saw this meme over the weekend, and it was what you and I, perhaps you and I did, on Saturday mornings. I remember Saturday mornings were a time my parents would somewhat sleep in. I would, as a young guy, 7 o'clock, I'm ready to go play and have fun in the neighborhood. And sometimes my mom would say, go back to bed. You cannot get up right now. Because I'd want to go watch cartoons early in the morning on Saturday. That's what you did. Well, I remember you built. I remember sometimes building a blanket fort, watching the cartoons from the couch cushions under the blanket fort. I remember the big bowls of cereal that probably were not all that healthy for you. All the things that we did, we had to watch Super Twin Powers Activate, Scooby-Doo, all the Saturday morning cartoons. Were you an NBC, ABC, CBS cartoon person? I remember all of that growing up. And so then I started thinking about other things that we did as children that my son, I don't think ever did. So waking up on Saturday morning was not the routine that it used to be for me. It was a Saturday morning was cartoons and cereal. Occasionally I would get some mix out and make some, Saturday morning cartoons were just huge. It's on the screen there. Saturday morning cartoons were a big deal. When my son was growing up, they were not that big a deal. He's like, oh, yeah, cartoons are on. Because, he could watch Nick Jr., he could watch he could watch all these other channels all the time. But Saturday morning cartoons were a big deal, and they're not a big deal now. So it brings up another question about things that used to be a big deal. And you can take it to the television and the Saturday morning cartoons. What was your Saturday morning routine like? But here's a question that they have pontificated and asked about some food items that used to be a real big deal, and yet they're not necessarily the big deal that they were. That's going to be our question of the day today. There's an online, I guess, a chat and a survey being done at chowhound.com. And it has a list of canned foods that were popular 50 years ago, but no one really eats them anymore. They're not as popular. Maybe they're not even made anymore. And it brought producer Chad and I up to a conversation about just the things that 50 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, that used to be maybe staples in your diet, maybe staples in your routine that are not staples. I mentioned, again, the early morning Saturday cartoons. That was a big deal. I mean, Saturday mornings were the best day. As soon as the cartoons were over that I wanted to watch, about 9, 10 o'clock, Soul Train, I remember, came on ABC. And I was 8. I didn't give a rat's patootie about Soul Train. And that was my cue to get up, do any kind of chore I had to do around the house, clean up my room, whatever it had to do before I could go play. And at that point, I disappeared usually on my bicycle, and you would see me when the streetlights come on. That was a Saturday, unless my dad had things that we were going to do to help him out or things. But anyway, canned foods, this is where it started. Canned foods that were popular 50 years ago that no one eats anymore. Anybody remember this? I mentioned this to producer Chad, and he thought it sounded gross, and his gag reflex began to exercise, and he got it under control. Chef Boyardee had a canned mac and cheese. Now, you think of the mac and cheese you make from the box, or hopefully you maybe, to make Robert F. Kennedy Jr., you make it from scratch. But there was a canned mac and cheese. Not sure if there still was, but Chef Boyardee does not have one. Here was a big brand. It was the original brand was Franco-American, but SpaghettiOs. Anybody remember SpaghettiOs as a kid? We were poor kids, and and I don't know why. My mom would usually not buy the SpaghettiOs with meatballs in the can, but we could slice up hot dogs and stick them in our SpaghettiOs, and we thought that we were living, as they would say, high up on the hog there. We were fancy kids then. Here's a one I guess they don't make anymore. Remember the Hunt's Pudding Pack snack packs? Hunt's Pudding snack packs? That's one. There was a brand called Sweet Sue. They had a canned whole chicken. I don't know how you can a whole chicken, but they had one. They also canned tamales. You can still buy them. You can just buy frozen, if not fresh, but canned tamales. There's still tamales in a can. You can still buy those. Boiled peanuts are hard to find. People don't eat those anymore. That was a Southern thing. Canned brown bread was a staple at the grocery store in the Northwest. If you're in the Philadelphia area, Campbell's had a soup called the pepper pot soup. And also, if you really want to know, you can have canned pork brains with milk gravy. Now, I checked, you can still buy that on Amazon. If you would like canned pork brains with milk gravy, you're probably not going to find it at Ralph's or King Soopers or Kroger or Safeway or Albertsons or wherever you shop at, the Walmart Supercenter. But you can, if you need the canned pork brains with the milk gravy, check out Amazon. They'll have that delivered to you by about 9:30 this morning. So I figured that one out. Here's another one that used to be big in a can, and I'm not sure if it's still there, but people don't buy it anymore. It was called deviled ham. It was ground up ham, spiced, packed up into a can, and it was primarily used as a spread on the sandwich. And Spam also had a spread. That's no longer available. So if you'd like to remember something that used to be maybe a staple in your pantry, a staple in your lunchbox, and or maybe it was just a thing that you did 30, 40 years ago, the kids today don't understand, feel free to do that. Stacy said canned raviolis is what I like. I like the canned raviolis too. I don't know if I ever bought my son those, but growing up, that was a staple. Canned ravioli. People are coming in with corn dogs. That was one. I still, I bought some corn dogs a year or so ago. My son didn't understand, but his friends came over and they thought it was fun. We had corn dogs. I bought them. They were in the freezer. You had them. I air fried them. That's a Jiffy popcorn. What was the popcorn that popped up? This big foil bubble popped up, and then that was fun. The ways you used to make popcorn were always fun. Before the microwave popcorn, that was fun. Chef Boyardee was gross. Anything Chef Boyardee was gross, says RJ. Is RJ an American? Anything Chef Boyardee is gross? We've got to check passports before we have people coming in there. We could have terrorists watching the show. You never know. Chef Boyardee is gross. Oh, my goodness. Fried Spam, yum. Yeah, we grew up on fried Spam and fried bologna. I don't know if that was because I was in the South or because we didn't have a lot of money. All right, good to have all of you here on the program. Lakey is my name. Foods that used to be popular but no longer are. That is your question of the day following the news story of the shooting in New York City and also President Trump hosting all the world leaders while he's actually in another country hosting him. Fantastic. I loved it. And I'll get to some more of your, keep posting and I'll get some more of your favorite foods that used to be popular that maybe don't seem to be all that popular any longer. Please, if I may, welcome in Dr. Carol Lieberman, our first guest of the morning, America's psychiatrist. How are you, Dr. Lieberman? Good to have you back on the show.
Fine, thank you. It's good to be back.
Well, we got a couple of topics I want to get to, not necessarily what I originally had. We had the shooter in New York City last night that claims that he had a brain injury, blames the NFL for this. Give me your thoughts. You kind of study the human mind. You know what minds are thinking. He never played in the NFL. Why he correlates his brain injury of high school football that he says he has with the NFL, I don't know, but give me your thoughts because you kind of understand what sometimes people think when they do bad things.
Sure. Well, even though he never made it to the NFL, it seems that was his dream. And playing high school football was all part of that. I mean, I think he felt that he was on the road to getting into the NFL. We don't know exactly yet. I haven't seen it come out yet why he never made it that far. But I think that's where he was hoping to go. What I think one of the most interesting things is that he shot himself in the chest instead of in the head, because he wants his brain to be studied for CTE, chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
He did. He evidently that was in his note, but he also said, I'm reading different reports. He also said to assist with his death, he had also drank some antifreeze. So I'm thinking that's probably not a good way to have a good brain sample if your body's going to be flooded with antifreeze. So I don't know.
I know it was very. There were in some articles it was very confusing as to who it was who drank the antifreeze, but that was actually one of his heroes, I guess. Long, what was his name? A football player with the NFL who had CTE and who drank antifreeze to kill himself.
Wow!
I know some articles made it seem like he drank antifreeze. That Shane Tamura, the killer, drank antifreeze, but I don't know. I think they're still just getting all this information in, but I don't think he did. I mean, otherwise, why would he care about preserving his brain by shooting himself in the chest? I don't know. We're getting in dribs and drabs, but it's a very sad story all the way around. And I was just reading also that he managed to kill one of the people that he killed. It works for the NFL. So even though he never made it up to the office of the NFL because he took the wrong elevator, which presumably is part of his CTE, if he does in fact have that, you can't diagnose CTE positively except on autopsy. So so perhaps when they do an autopsy of him, they will find that. But I think he thought he had it in any case. And it's also interesting that here he was working we don't know exactly how well he was working and how recently he was working, but he had a license to be an investigator in Las Vegas. So, I mean, he couldn't have been that, or maybe he was. Maybe that's part of the thing. His brain started interfering so much that he couldn't even do his work as a private investigator.
Well, it's fascinating that you said, and now that you say that, I'm like, oh, that's true. You cannot diagnose CTE as until you're dead. So you don't know you have it. And so here he is self-diagnosing himself and saying that he's got it, giving himself his own prognosis. That seems strange.
Well, we don't know for sure. I mean, you can certainly, doctors can say amongst their differential diagnoses, you might have this, you might have that, you might have that. And it certainly is possible that a doctor said that one of the things he could have, for why his brain wasn't functioning so well was CTE. We have to wait and see about that.
Yeah.
But or he did self-diagnose. But they found medication. I haven't been able to find out yet which medication, but in his possession or in his car, they found some medication. So that will give a big clue.
Wow. Another story about a crazed lunatic, if you will, is the story of the Koberger case out of Idaho. He was not forced to tell what his motive was when he pled guilty, avoiding the death sentence. I talked to someone yesterday, Niels Gravilius, an investigator out of L.A. Niels says he probably thinks that he was also trying to spare his parents from the detail of the depravity of his mind. Give me your thoughts about this guy that murdered some people and doesn't seem to want to tell why he murdered them.
Well, that's an interesting thought, that he wanted to spare his parents, but I don't think he was so without empathy, and he really didn't seem to react very much to his mother and his sister and all that. I don't know that I don't agree with that as the reason. I don't think he would care enough about his parents or his family to care about sparing them. I think the reason why he didn't want to tell his motive is because he's going to write a book about it. And I think he has hopes that he's going to be writing this book with one of his professors, Dr. Ramsland, who is well known for writing books on killers. And I think that was his secondary motive, to become famous as a famous killer, criminal, murderer. But, I have been saying, and I don't know if we talked about this in the past, but if we did, I would have certainly said that, I told everybody his motive. It's frustrating for me because I've been saying his motive since the very beginning, since before they arrested him, since before they knew or they thought that it was Koberger. And did we talk about this before?
Let's repeat it because I don't remember it offhand, so we might have. It may ring a bell.
All right. Well, when the murders first happened, which were on November 13th, 2022, when they started giving us a little information just about the murders, about first they told us that it was the bloodiest crime scene that a lot of the investigators had ever seen, and it was done by a knife, which is a very personal way of killing. So what that said is this is somebody with a lot of rage. And the next thing they told us was about who the victims were. These four beautiful people, especially Kaylee and Maddie. And not to say, but and then there was Xana and Ethan, of course, and they were all popular. They all had parties at their house. They all were, beautiful, as I said. But then later on, and so they were like the popular kids. And so that told me those two things, the bloody crime scene and who the victims were, told me that the killer had to be an incel, which stands for involuntarily celibate, meaning a guy who can't get women to have sex with him and date him and fall in love with him, and they're enraged about it. Then later on, it came out that it turns out that he's been rejected all his life by women. He fits the profile of an incel to a T. And then it came out that when he was in middle school, his first love, the first woman who rejected him, was this woman she was a blonde cheerleader. Now, who does that remind you of? Maddie and Kaylee. I think he was killing. He had built up all this rage all his life from all the rejections from women he got. And then he was killing his blonde first love cheerleader,
wow,
who rejected him. She didn't just reject him like, I don't want to go out with you. She really, made a big deal out of it, taunted him and told other girls not to go out with him. And, I think that is why he picked Maddie and Kaylee. And he was expressing his rage for all the women who had rejected him all his life. Now, women who incels call women who reject them Stacy's, and they call the men who are with these women Chads. And so Ethan was a Chad, and these other girls were Stacy's.
Wow, I didn't know the lingo, but the producer of the show's name is Chad. That ought to tell you something. It's this Koberger guy. What did it tell you? His eyes looked glassy. He saw tears. He saw crying. He saw people cursing at him, and he never really changed his facial expression. Is there some kind of a nonverbal communication that was communicating?
Yes, I think that when he went into that courthouse to hear all these victim impact statements, and I watched the whole thing, I couldn't pull myself away. I mean, it was so sad, but it was also just so compelling. They each spoke in their own way, in a very unique way. And each of their stories was really sad, the losses. But I think he was determined to be a Teflon defendant, that he wasn't going to show anything. And he, for the most part, he had his face in this one set expression. His mouth was kind of tight, and he blinked a fair amount, however. So whenever someone said something that got to him in some way, and it was different ways, it could hurt him, it could make him angry, it could, different ways, he blinked. But the thing that I thought was, and so Kaylee's sister and mother and father spoke, and they were they were the most angry, or they expressed their anger the most at him. And so his face tightened when they were talking. But then there were these two fathers, the father of Maddie and the father of Xana, who spoke, and they both they spoke about how they were addicts, alcoholics, and Maddie's father and Maddie's biological parents had been divorced, and so, but this was her stepfather spoke also. But when her biological father spoke, when he walked up to the podium, you could tell that he wasn't in great health. He looked very, very thin. He must have lost a lot of weight, probably some before, certainly some after his daughter was killed. And he talked about how she was his one accomplishment in life. She was the greatest thing that he did in his life. And he talked about how his best memory of her, they used to go to concerts. So he was still in her life to some degree, even after her parents divorced. And they used to go to concerts together. And he talked about his favorite memory with her was when she wanted to see this particular artist who had come to town, and tickets were sold out. But they were being given out in some way from a radio station. And he did whatever it was, it was the certain 10th caller. He didn't explain how he got them, but he did whatever the radio station was looking for. And he got 4 meet and greet tickets. And so he went with her and 2 of her friends. And that was like the most beautiful memory, because like he could give her something. And then Xana's father talked about how he lived 7 minutes away from the house where they were all killed. And his daughter had called him earlier in the day before Koberger came to the house. And she was just kind of in a sad mood, he thought. And so when she called him, he thought about going over to the house, but she had told him never drink and drive. So he wanted to listen to her. Apparently he had been drinking that day, and he didn't go over there. And of course, now, he beat himself up for not having done that. And he said to Koberger, if I were there, you would have had to face me. It was, and so why I mentioned, so his face with these 2 men, these 2 fathers, his face did soften a little bit. You could tell a change in his expression. And clearly, he was an addict with heroin, so he could relate to what they were talking about. And you did see a change in his expression. And that was just, all of them were just so touching.
If you were diagnosing, I mean, obviously the guy in New York, he may have this encephalopathy. We don't know about that. But this guy's now going to jail for the rest of his life, not wanting to give the family any closure. That shows selfishness and kind of a narcissism, if you will, not a diagnosis, just an observation, because I'm not the professional. Do a Koberger ever get to the place where he has regret? Is that something that happens to these types of people once they get in prison, that they wish they could have expressed that regret or given closure, or do they remain this selfish son of a gun that he seems to be?
Well, certainly for Koberger, I can say I think he's going to remain as angry and as detached. And it's a sociopath and a psychopath, essentially the same thing. That's a characteristic, a major characteristic, that they have no remorse, they have no empathy. And that's why when I was talking about the fathers, when I saw a little softening, I don't think I would say that he actually had a large amount of empathy, but you did see a little change. But they don't, in fact, I mean, I think he's looking forward to it. I think he would have liked to have gotten away with the whole thing altogether, but since he didn't, he's looking forward to his next. Although some of the parents, particularly Kaylee's sister and mother, said something about when he gets to jail that these guys are going to be waiting for him and all that. But so obviously I'm sure he's a little scared of that. But he's looking forward to this next step, which is writing a book and getting attention again. The judge at the end said, "Your 15 minutes are over." And but he's thinking to himself, "No, they're not.
Yeah,
I'm still here. I'm going to be writing a book. You're going to hear from me again."
Let me ask you this question. I heard, and you follow this up much closer than I did, that his parents and those around him have been involved in the mental health world, and they had. Is there nobody around Koberger that saw this coming, that this guy was capable? I mean, I heard he even applied for maybe a law enforcement job in the area previously. Should this have been something that someone was able to catch?
Well, his two sisters they became therapists. And so, but they were in training. I'm not sure when they started their training as compared to when, whether it was before, I guess it had to have been before he left for school in Washington. Whether one of them was living at home, I think at the time, but, yes, his family missed it. Yes, especially if they had been going to school to be therapists, it's especially unbelievable that they missed it. But like his father took him to learn boxing because he could tell that he was kind of an outcast and he was not happy. And, he thought maybe if he took him to learn boxing that he would feel better. I mean, okay, but why didn't they take him to a psychiatrist? That would have been a lot better.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and again, I hope his 15 minutes is up. But you're probably right. He's got a book, and I don't. How can you spend the money if you make money on a book in prison? Do you just kind of add to your commissary?
Well, different states have different rules about that. I think in Idaho you're not allowed to get the money that you make, but it doesn't matter. Because he wouldn't care about the money part of it. I mean, yeah, sure, I think that he has enough women, in love with him who are sending money to his commissary that he doesn't have to worry about that. But he wants the fame more than the money for the commissary.
Got a lot of women going to send him money, and a lot of guys going to meet him in the shower there at the prison. So it's going to be a rough one there for Mr. Koberger, I would guess. Dr. Lieberman, it's always a pleasure. Anything else on your radar screen? I also want you to give your website out and talk about your podcast in the world that we live in. Very important that we stay connected and all these topics.
Sure. Well, a website, I have a few websites. A website that's related to some of the things we've been talking about, legal things, is in regard to my expert witness work. So expertwitnessphorensic.psychiatrist.com. And then my terroristtherapist.com website. You can hear on there my podcast, terroristtherapist.com. Also, of course, my Twitter, which is Dr. Carol MD. So DRCAROLE MD on Twitter. And I always rant on my Twitter, usually every morning.
Let me ask you this one more question. I know you wrote a book about terrorism for parents to explain that to kids. Parents, you have these crazy stories of shooting in New York City, this Koberger case. They get all this media attention. And sometimes, you have a terrorist attack. You have the Israeli attacks and things like that on October the 6th. What do you do with a kid that hears about this murder or hears about these girls being attacked by Koberger? You've written a book for children. What is your advice? Because sometimes it gets a little overwhelming. If you're a parent, you've got a kid off at college going, oh my God, I don't want to become a helicopter parent, but how do I deal with this?
Yes, absolutely. My book is called Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, Oh My, How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror. And this was I became the terrorist therapist after 9/11 and helping people cope with terrorism, helping them become more resilient and so on, warning people that the terrorists are not done and we're more in danger today than we were on 9/11. But so it was the reason for writing it, was all part of my terrorist therapist work. But certainly a lot of the things that I talk about as far as building resilience is good for what we're going through today with all of these insane people doing insane things that are very scary and that can make kids feel that the world is a very scary place, to remind them of that. And because I have the first half of the book is for parents and teachers, second half is a picture book for kids. And there's all different ways to get kids to express their feelings and to become more resilient.
The name of the book again, available anywhere books are sold, but give that name again.
Sure. Lions and Tigers and Terrorists, Oh My, How to Protect Your Child in a Time of Terror. And it's on Amazon. It's also on my website, terroristtherapist.com.
Dr. Lieberman, always a pleasure. Last time your cat was rearranging the chairs, the cushions on the couch during the interview. I'm missing the cat. Make sure the cat knows he's always welcome to rearrange the pillows.
Okay, I will.
Dr. Lieberman, always a pleasure. Dr. Carol Lieberman, terrorist therapist, podcast and Lions and Tigers. Yeah, you get the idea. Look her up and you can get all the books and the podcasts, etc. Great resource here. And I appreciate the insight into these sick minds that are doing very, very, very sick things. They are. All right. Question of the day. We got another guest coming up. Brian Reisinger going to be with us here in just a moment. But before we dive in, there is a question of the day. As food that used to be popular that doesn't seem to be popular anymore. It's not as popular. My son growing up didn't crave and ask at the grocery store if he could have SpaghettiOs or canned ravioli. I used to argue for that. My mom worked during the daytime in the summertime, but I was home alone, had some chores. After that, I had to have a clean room, a made bed. I had to keep the lawn mowed, watered, edged, all that stuff. And after all that, I could go play with my friends, goof off, but she stocked the kitchen up. And back in the day, I didn't have Robert F. Kennedy Jr. breathing down my shoulder. So, it was a lunch, making my own lunch of sandwiches, and or a sandwich, or there were some canned soups, so maybe some canned ravioli, the SpaghettiOs. Those are all things that used to be very, very popular and probably staples in everybody's pantry, but maybe not so anymore. I remember growing up, I had we were prolific Spam people. We had Spam because, again, we weren't raking in the money. So Spam was something that we used to fried Spam, but it was occasionally make it to the dinner table. And I realized growing up there that it was part of life, right? It was just part of daily existence. You had Spam on occasion. And I took my son and his friends back in their early high school years to Hawaii during their winter break. I took a group of kids out to Hawaii. We're all hanging out on the beach. We're driving around Hawaii, and Spam, if you know, is a very big deal in the Hawaiian culture. And we ended up buying Spam. The kids love Spam for the first time. They had never had it. I said, wow, we all grew up with Spam. Spam was just part of it. And these kids had never had Spam. They're 15 or 16 years old. I took them all out to Hawaii on a vacation with my son, and they had Spam for the very first time. They actually liked it. They enjoyed it. A matter of fact, when they would come to the house, I would have Spam on occasion. And I said, boys, here's your Spam. I don't think they ever got the courage to open it, but they liked the Spam in Hawaii. They said, wow, we've been missing this the whole time. Growing up on bologna, if I ever packed a lunch or had lunch, the best we could ever get was the fancy pack of what Oscar Mayer or something had 4-pack. There was a pickle loaf in there and some other stuff, and you avoid the olive loaf or whatever that thing was. We didn't like that part. You save that for your grandma or something. That was fancy if you got that one, but otherwise you got bologna, and that's why we ate. My bologna had a first name Bologna. You know, remember that? Bologna was just staple. Everybody has bologna. I'll never forget, my son was in 3rd or 4th grade, and his school at the time, he's going to a charter school, every day of the week they had local restaurants that brought in catering for them, kind of one of those schools. And he wanted to eat school every day because a couple of days a week was Chick-fil-A bringing food in. The pizza places they're bringing food every day. That was their meals. But one day my son, about 3rd or 4th grade, said, Dad, I want to bring a sack lunch. I want to bring a lunch to school tomorrow. I said, really? He goes, yeah, some of the boys are packing their lunches, you know, kind of like men heading down to the factory, wanted to pack their lunch. And I said, okay, we've got some ham and cheese. We can stop and get you some thin shaved, you know, I'm thinking deli. I think I like the shaved turkey, or real thin sliced. He said, no, Dad, here's what I want. He's in 4th grade. What do you want, son? I want bologna. I said, son, you've never had bologna in your life. And I'm thinking, he said, well, that's what one of the boys is eating is bologna. He said, it's good. His mom likes it. I said, I've never kept, again, nothing opposed to bologna. I just never bought it. Anyway, it's just things that used to be popular. Everybody ate bologna. Now I'm not sure anybody eats bologna as much. All right. Glad to have you all here on the show. Again, question of the day goes back to this thing of things that we grew up 50, 30, 20 years ago eating that were prominent, and yet now they're not so prominent to do. You don't eat those candy or eat those foods anymore. I was telling my son about Pop Rocks. And one time about 10, he was 8 or 9, and I ran across a store that had some Pop Rocks, and I got in the Pop Rocks. He thought those were the coolest things. Do they still make Pop Rocks? Yeah. Now, he liked the Pop Rocks, but he wasn't a sweet guy, but that was kind of fun, popping in your mouth. But Chef Boyardee ravioli, man, if we had that was highfalutin. That was fancy. Fancy. Foods that used to be popular that are no longer that popular or no longer eaten. Rich says in the chat room, we did eat liverwurst. Don't think I've ever had that, but I appreciate you sharing, and I'm kind of okay that I haven't had that. Maybe I have. Government cheese, Jeff says. Anybody going to get you some government cheese? I feel like there's a Johnny Cash song about to break out here. Got to get me some government cheese. Rich says, I was blessed and fortunate to have home-cooked meals, biscuits and gravy, pancakes, bacon, sausage, and eggs. Oh, that's still very popular stuff there. That being said, it was a treat to have anything that came out of a box or a can. I realized I got older that the homemade meals were much better than the boxed and canned ones, but it was a big deal. Yeah, so yeah, the canned ravioli was a big deal. I don't know why I liked the little puffy pockets, and I'd like the canned ravioli. Jeff says, Swanson's Hungry Man TV dinners. Anybody remember the TV dinners? I mean, now you can order foods pre-ordered, and they're kind of like TV dinners, but they're Factor and their nutrition and pre-made 2 minutes and it's done. But the TV dinners of yesterday, a Salisbury steak, wow, you could get that. You had the Salisbury steak, you were eating very, very fancy. That's not as popular anymore. They were called TV dinners, kids, because there were actually trays that the family would set up in the living room and watch the television, watch the TV while you ate your dinner on the TV tray. It's called a TV tray. I mean, it's a whole genre. I don't think some people know what a TV tray is, and some people know what a TV dinner is, but they're not as popular as they used to be. Not as popular as they used to be. All right, we'll come back, talk more about the shooting in New York City. I still want to continue to talk about Trump hosting foreign leaders when he's actually being hosted by another foreign leader. I thought that was just pure badassery. I thought that was kind of fun. There's a report coming out from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., MAHA, talking about the chemicals that we're still ingesting and the danger there. I'll get to all that here in just a moment. But two things I want to remind you about. I got a great guest coming up. Brian Reisinger is coming in here in about 30 seconds. And also in just a minute, I'm going to tell you about our charity golf event coming up Friday, September the 5th. It's in Erie, Colorado, the Colorado National Golf Club. Club. And if you golf anywhere under the sound of my dulcet tones, you have no excuse except to fly in for this great charity event. It's our 9th annual event. Hard to believe we've been doing this 9 years. Rivers Promise, you see the charity behind me. We're building Legacy Christian Academy and helping kids out in Rwanda, in Africa, and it's a great day of fundraising. Want to see you Friday, September the 5th, Colorado National, not far from the Denver International Airport. Just north of the Denver metro area, just outside of the Boulder area, just south of Fort Collins, centrally located, but you need to be there. Even if you're not a great golfer, it doesn't matter. Come see us September the 5th at the Colorado National Golf Club. All right, ladies and gentlemen, Brian Reisinger is in the the green room, waiting patiently for his time to come on stage. Brian, welcome back in, sir. How are you?
Hey, Jimmy, it's good to be with you. I'm doing great. How about yourself?
Now, you grew up in the farm life. Are there foods that back in the day as a kid? I mean, obviously, you probably got a lot of fresh food, but are there foods that you remember as a kid kind of eating and going, oh, those aren't as popular today? I mean, we were reminiscing about the SpaghettiOs with meatballs and the Chef Boyardee ravioli. Any foods come to mind for you, sir?
I was listening, and those were a couple good ones. I got two. One's from when we used to go into town, and the other is straight from the farm. So when we used to go into town, it was the ring pops. If you remember those, you go to right next to those Pop Rocks, I think.
Yep.
And I don't know if I see those ring pops anymore. Me and my sister loved those when we'd go into town, and my dad would let us get something. The farm one I've got for you might be off the wall for some people, but we used to eat a lot of rabbit and squirrel. And growing up, I thought that was normal, and I thought maybe it was more normal back in the 80s and 90s. My wife has never heard of that, and nobody else I've talked to has ever heard of that outside of maybe our couple hundred acres back in southern Wisconsin. So,
when was the last time you ate rabbit or squirrel, or do you still do this?
It's funny because I just been and we had a lot of rabbit and a lot of squirrel in season, and so I decided I was going to get back to my boyhood roots, take the 22 out there and do a little bit of hunting. And so my mom has been cooking rabbit and squirrel ever since. So we just had a little bit of a renaissance on that after about maybe 10, 15 years of it falling out of favor. So we're trying to guess.
Rabbit tastes like chicken, does it not?
It really does. And actually squirrel isn't all that different either. A lot of it is kind of like dark meat chicken. The squirrel is maybe a little gamier, a little bit leaner, but it's good. It's good. It's good lean meat. You just got to kind of, if it's foreign to you, just kind of push that out of your mind, and you might just think it's all chicken.
Well, it's the texture of some of these different meats that get me. If they're a little slimy, I'm a texture guy. But the flavor I can do that. But I don't want the texture to screw me up there.
I hear that. Well, we'll get that right, and we'll get you some squirrel and rabbit at some point here.
All right. Roger says he can occasionally find rabbit at King Soopers. I love it. I don't know. Maybe he's scraping the parking lot. I've never seen rabbit at a grocery store. That doesn't count. Producer Chad, I know, has had he's been angry with some rabbits that were eating his flowers and things in his backyard. And let's just say he had opportunity, but I think he might have wasted some spoilage there. Because there were some rabbits that paid a price for eating up the flowers and the produce in producer Chad's backyard. We could have had rabbits too.
That's an efficient move right there, because you can supply meat and you can rescue your produce, so it's a twofer if you get into squirrel and rabbit hunting.
All right, Brian Reisinger is my guest. By the way, if you're not familiar with Brian, I've been on the program many times, long-form interviews, short interviews as well. Author of a book called Land Rich, Cash Poor, My Family's Hope and the Untold History of the Disappearing American Farmer. Let's dive into this whole thing, Brian, about the Trump tariffs. It seems like we finally have a deal with the European Union. There was a lot of fear and trepidation about what tariffs would do to the economy. Even people like Bill Maher says, okay, I kind of got this wrong. Donald Trump was right. It didn't spin us into recession or into depression, and it didn't destroy everything. He turned out to be a pretty good negotiator. What are you hearing on the farming and the ranching front out there? Have these Trump tariffs and new trade deals, are they going to play out for the breadbasket of America?
It's a great question. There's a lot of farmers who supported what the president wanted to do on trade, supported wanting to get tough, and they stuck with him even when they knew it might cause themselves some trouble. Because as you know, farmers have been victim to unfair trade practices, which are not good for getting tough. But also they have to be careful that, if we do get into disputes where things spin out of control, where there's a bunch of retaliatory tariffs, it makes it harder for them to sell their products abroad. So farmers have always been supportive, but have to keep an eye on this stuff. And as these trade deals have come in, the EU, Great Britain, Japan, smaller countries like Indonesia, I think that there has been some relief, some sense of, okay, these are countries where we're opening up their markets to our agricultural products, or maybe wiping out some unfair trade standards along the way. And what I would say is they're continuing to watch this and just hoping that it continues, and hoping that we can continue to make trade deals, and they can be trade deals where we put family farms first. We need two things for farmers. One is we need those bigger trading partners. There's a couple of them there. Japan, China is still having a back and forth. We need the big trading partners to stop cheating and draw a hard line with them if we can't get them to do something, but do a deal with them if they will be fair. And then we need a whole bunch of deals with other smaller countries so that we can diversify. Because one of the issues that farmers have been victim to is that through the 90s and 2000s, our leaders really left them totally victim to the Chinese. The Chinese have been the biggest buyer, buying up products and then dumping them, pushing products down on top of the cheating that they're doing. So that's, I think, where farm families are at as they watch this situation.
I believe some people have said, even the Trump administration has said, this is a game changer for farmers. It's going to really, really help the American farmer. Is that a truthful statement? Is there still a wait and see mode out there, or are farmers and ranchers in America optimistic that these trade deals are going to help them?
Yeah, generally speaking, I think that they've been glad to see these trade deals, and they know that the trade deals have been negotiated after drawing a harder line. It used to be we were giving away the store, and on the other hand, farmers didn't want to totally shut down trade. So to see these tougher negotiations yielding deals is something that farmers have been happy about. I think that's absolutely accurate. And from here, we just need to see where it goes. We need to hope that we can continue to seize the moment to have more trade deals that put family farms first. But I think they're glad to see this. And a couple of examples. One is in the UK. There's an opportunity for folks who grow beef that meets their sustainability standards to be able to sell into the UK. For tomatoes, actually, having tariffs has helped the domestic tomato industry that has for a long time faced unfair competition from other countries. And so there's a lot of pockets of agriculture that are seeing some very specific benefits. And I think in general, agriculture is glad to see deals being struck after tougher negotiations and hoping that there's more.
The voice of Brian Reisinger. If you're listening later in the day, you're not joyously watching this television or this show live streamed, then you don't see the screen that says Brian Reisinger, author of a book called Land Rich, Cash Poor, My Family's Hope and the Untold History of the Disappearing American Farmer. It's the hidden history of the economic and cultural crisis, the threats of very school supply, and the disappearance of the American farmer. There's two things that have happened also in the Trump administration. Hard to believe he's only been in office for just over 6 months. These deportations, but then he came back a couple of weeks ago and said he may be working with local ranchers and farmers that if they would like to kind of vouch for some people that might have been here illegally and they want them back as good workers, that maybe there can be something worked out with ICE and immigration to get these people visas if these farmers will kind of, self-police them. What is his plan that has been floated, Brian?
Well, the idea here is that farmers who are among President Trump's biggest supporters, rural areas, farm communities, they want to secure the border. Many of them not only support that, but many of them voted for President Trump for that reason. And they also deal with that reality that because we've had this relentless push in our country for decades now of bigger farms and cheaper labor, many farms that are just trying to get by don't have much choice but to employ very, very cheap labor. And sometimes it's hard to know if that labor is legal or not because the cartels have a whole cottage industry to try to get people through in a way that conceals whether they have a legal status or not. And so I think what you see is the Trump administration trying to work through that reality, trying to stick to their agenda, stick to their guns of securing the border, cracking down on the cartels, and finding a path forward. I think that farmers want to be a partner in that and a way to do that in whatever way is acceptable to the federal government. I also think that more broadly, if you step back from this picture long term, the solution is to secure the border and to have a path toward that legal labor. So the H-2A temporary farm worker visa program is a great thing to pair with securing the border and cracking down on the cartels, and then have that H-2A temporary farm worker visa program functioning properly so that there is a supply of legal labor that is able to be here. And if it's folks who come from other countries to be able to find a way up, but they're here with legal status, it can help solve some of the dilemma that our country's been facing.
Again, the voice of Brian Reisinger. The name of the book is Land Rich, Cash Poor, My Family's Hope and the Untold History of the Disappearing American Farmer, available anywhere fine books are sold. One more quick question. President Trump has said, hey, we're doing so well with these tariffs. We're going to have a lot more revenue in America. And he's now, floating again the idea of America should get in on the gravy train here, the money train. And he's floating about the idea of giving rebate checks to Americans that are funded by this tariff revenue. That's part of a new proposal. Give me your thoughts.
Well, I think that people in rural America always, generally speaking, I don't speak for everybody. I think in general, folks in rural America especially appreciate the chance to put money back in their own pocket. And so, whether it's through tax cuts or other revenue, the government sending money back to people doesn't happen all that often, not as much as it should. So, I think it's an interesting question. I don't know the economics behind it, but I think that it's an interesting issue. And I think, politically speaking, it'll be a winner for hardworking families in rural America and a lot of parts of America to be able to put more money in their pocket. In many cases, in rural areas, it's people putting money back into their farms, but also other types of small businesses. A lot of people don't realize this, but the amount of entrepreneurship, the number of small businesses owned in rural America far outstrips urban America and suburban areas, because we've had a lot of large companies that have left, and a lot of people, plumbers, electricians, carpenters, they're filling the gap without the big companies they're investing in rural America. And so there's a lot of small businesses who, they'll take that money and they'll put that back into their business and try to keep making it, whether they're a one-man band or whether they can hire employees.
Brian Reisinger, if somebody wants a copy of the book or to follow your work out there, I know you've written for different publications. The name of the latest book is called Land Rich, Cash Poor, My Family's Hope and the Untold History of the Disappearing American Farmer. Where do folks find you, and where do folks find the book?
Absolutely. You can find me on the website you got there. Thank you. It's www.brian-reisinger.com. That's BRIAN-Reisinger, REISINGER.com. You can also find the book in bookstores nationwide and on Amazon or anywhere else you buy online. And we've got the paperback available now. It's coming out in September. And so anybody who wants to pre-order that paperback for a little bit lower price point, it's out there. I just appreciate anybody who spreads the word on these issues.
Brian-Reisinger. I appreciate you hopping on the program, Brian. I know we moved the time a little bit on you. Appreciate your flexibility. Thank you very much, Brian Reisinger. And again, let me give the name of the book. It's an interesting book, especially for all of us that may be city slickers that don't understand the plight of the American farmer and the importance of the American farmer and the importance of taking care of those that the politicians believe are in flyover country. It's called Land Rich, Cash Poor, My Family's Hope and the Untold History of the Disappearing American Farmer. Very important to read for all of us. Again, that area of the country used to be called the breadbasket of America with these trade deals. Hopefully it's going to continue, the breadbasket of the world, and hopefully the breadbasket of the world once again. Brian Reisinger, Land Rich, Cash Poor, My Family's Hope and the Untold History of the Disappearing American Farmer, Brian Reisinger. All right, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a pleasure. I want to remind you one more thing, or a couple more things. First of all, about my friend Sherry Cree. I talk about her daily on the program. She's the realtor that I would recommend that you give a phone call to. If you're ready to sell, you're ready to buy, or listen to this. If you're even contemplating it and you say, I don't know when, but I think it's going to happen, we're thinking about it, have that conversation, start that strategy session. She's had people talk to her a year or so in advance, and then they'll call up Sherry, hey, I want to sell the home. She goes, oh, I thought maybe you went with another realtor. No, we went with you. We're just kind of following up with you in real time here, and it's a year later, but now we're ready. You gave great advice and we held off a little bit. Listen, you need to have that strategy session with Sherry. She knows that if you play it right, and she believes, and she can help you understand this, that real estate transaction you do, your real estate, you're buying a home, selling a home, that can be the very thing that creates generational wealth for you, your family, and your grandkids. And so you want to play it smartly. And I know there's people say, well, I don't want to move right now because of interest rates. Right? Listen, you can at least start getting the strategy. If you know one thing's going to happen is that rates will go up, rates will go down, economy will change, but you still need to have that strategy. And Sherry Cree works every moment of every day, every time that she has an interaction with the client. She knows that she's just putting in the investment and working hard to earn your the privilege to be your realtor for life. She wants to help watch your family journey down the real estate pathway to ending up to that place of creating generational wealth. Even when your kids go buy a house, you say, hey, Sherry's our family realtor. She takes care of us. Homeswithsherry.com. Have the conversation. Maybe you're not ready to move immediately. Maybe it's a conversation about, is it a good move? She can help you with that pricing of the home, just finding that right sweet spot to where you're not giving it away, but you're also not languishing overpriced. Listen, there's a lot of strategery, if you will, that goes into selling a home. And Sherry Cree, in my estimation, has mastered so much of that strategery. But the most important thing she has mastered is her focus is she wants to be your realtor for life. And that's how she treats you. That's how she treats your family. There's a website. I can give you the phone number, but it's so simple. Just go to the website, homeswithsherry.com. Again, even if you're not ready immediately, homeswithsherry.com, homeswithsherry.com, and make sure you tell her that Jaime Lagos, that would be me, Jimmy Lakey, talking about her on the program. I'm not going to get to some of these stories. I'll save them for tomorrow. I think they're evergreen enough. There's a report from Maha that says some of us are still in danger. That's Make America Healthy Again. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., I think, is silently and kind of behind the scenes making so many great changes as to how we how we are ingesting food and dyes, and why our standards of food and food safety are totally different than other countries, and why some chemicals and crap we allow here are not allowed in Europe. It's very interesting, and I'm going to do the Maha report. That's about chemicals that are still in foods and water. We'll do that tomorrow. Also, the Justice Department has filed a complaint against, remember, Judge Boasberg or Beelzebub or whatever his name was. The Justice Department has filed a complaint against him for his partisan hackery. Judge Boasberg has had an official DOJ complaint filed against him. We will dive deep into that tomorrow. What does it mean for the future of Judge Beelzebub? I mean, Boasberg, whatever his name is. What does it mean for him? And we'll talk about that. And there's also a social media post revealing that anti-Trump sentiment among those that came up with the Russia collusion report. They said, oh, look at this intelligence, CIA intelligence. And then they looked up the social media of some of the spooks in the CIA that had helped craft that report. And they were actually just coming at it from a perspective of hating Trump. We'll talk about that tomorrow as well. Several other stories developing, but we'll get to all those stories tomorrow on the program. A little programming note: if you're mindful of prayer, pray for our good friend Laura Carno. Carno's usually with us on a Tuesday. She messaged me this morning. She's got to skip this week. They had a storm. Many of you have been following the Carno saga. They are moving, and the house they were in sold quickly, so they've been living on the property while their house is being built out there. Anyway, they had a storm come set up on their property last night, hammered them for about an hour and 15 minutes, and damaged the fifth wheel where she's been doing the show from, ripped down with 50-mile-per-hour wind, ripped down the vapor barrier that was torn off their new house. The construction site porta potty went flying as well. So say a good prayer for Laura Carno. She'll be back this week. She's working on her property today, trying to get things back in line. And once she does that, she has Faster Colorado training going on for the rest of the week, so she can't reschedule. So Carno will be back with us next Tuesday, and we look forward to that. But say a prayer for Carno. She's okay. Her and Bill are fine. But there's just a little bit of cleanup and mess they got to pick up around the place. I'm fighting this cold, so I'm a lot better today, but this time I had to mute the mic. All right. Good to have all of you. Say a prayer for Carno. She's good. She's happy, and she just wanted to have a little extra time to clean up some stuff around the place. What it boils down to is Carno and I've worked together. Carno didn't want to have to put her makeup on. Carno didn't want to. If it were radio, she might have sucked out. Okay, yeah, like I'll make comment. That camera, it gets him every time. That camera, she just shows she bothers her. All right, we had a question of the day. A lot of you are fantastic responses. Taking us a while. I said foods that were popular maybe 30, 40, 50 years ago, but not so popular now. Anybody remember the candy cigarettes and bubblegum cigars? Not saying it was right, but it was available. There was nothing wrong with it, Rich. It was just a good time. Even my mother, who did not let us listen to rock and roll music in the house, unless, we were pretty strict at home. She would allow us to have candy cigarettes. I think we smuggled them in, but she would allow it if she didn't know. That was the rule. Arloa says, oh, remember the candy necklaces? Oh, those were messy. Those were fun. The first reason, who thought that was a good idea? Hey, let's put candy around your neck as a kid when you're sweating and drooling out in summertime, and then you can eat that candy off the necklace and it'll, yeah. This is why my generation was not afraid of the booger cootie virus. It's why we weren't afraid of the COVID. We had candy necklaces. Anybody remember the dipsticks? Oh, dipsticks. That's one that's used to be so popular. Anybody? It was that package of 3 different, I think it was 2 or 3 powders, like a Kool-Aid mix, and we had like a Kool-Aid mix, and you stick that little candy stick in there and you lick it, and then you dip it back in. And if you had a good friend, you might share your dipstick with them. Yeah, that was a big deal. Dipsticks. I remember dipsticks. And then we hired Delilah around here at the Lakey Entertainment Towers, and we've had a dipstick here ever since. By the way, I've got another report that I need to do on the show. I may have to do this tomorrow. Let me pull up the headline. I've got to find it here. I'm digging through my stack. Why inside jokes are so important. Oh, Jim says at our age, the new candy necklace turns into ibuprofen. That's probably not a bad idea. A little candy necklace. Hang on, doctor. Chew that up. At some ages, some people will take an aspirin a day or something, 2 aspirin a day. Watch out, you'd be like Trump, you'll bruise your hand, but you got to take the aspirin a day. Yeah, they probably should do like a pearl necklace of aspirin, white aspirin, and then you can do the orange of ibuprofen. I think that'd be a good idea. Yeah. And so anyway, why inside jokes are so important. I need to let this Delilah. I know there's a lot of people get offended by inside jokes. Jimmy, you're picking on Delilah. You're picking on producer Chad, calling him producer Patel. Listen, inside jokes are very healthy for the culture. And I have the proof here in my fingers to say it, that they create psychological safety. And so there's a good thing. Psychologists, I should have asked this to Dr. Lieberman. Psychologists say they promote your brain's belonging response. And it's the brain's way of saying you're safe here. So the more the merrier. So we have inside jokes. I'm going to explain this to Delilah tomorrow, and I'm going to explain why it is that you are you're the butt of a lot of inside jokes, because it makes you want to belong here even more. It does. They help us cope. They help make relationships feel very exclusive. And at the end of the day, the silly phrases of create memories and make you happy. So please, anybody trying to defend the honor of Delilah, please know there is no honor left in Delilah. And inside jokes are good for her. I'm gonna sell that to her tomorrow on the show, so that she understands what a joyous privilege it is for her to get to listen to my dulcet tones every day. Thank you, Delilah. I appreciate it. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm starting to feel the cough come on, so we better wrap it up. Let's do the meme roulette. What do you say? We're going to go around the globe. We steal memes shamelessly from sources all around the world, and we claim them as our own. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. There it is, the Epstein Island Rewards Program. These are all people in Barry Hussein Obama's administration that were given the Medal of Freedom or given a award around their neck by Barry Hussein Obama. If you notice all of their faces, all of them have been accused allegedly of attending the island. Yeah, you get a medal. You get a medal as long as you got the child. Yeah, they have a bunch of sickos there. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. It's 2 husky dogs, beautiful animals there. The husband dog has his mouth wide open. The wife is given a glare. The wife says, I want to donate my kids to people who are starving. And the husband says, anyone who fits into your clothes, honey, is not starving. Wow. That is a good way right there to end up in trouble. That's very bad behavior. Yeah. All right, round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. I hate it when people ask me if I did anything exciting over the weekend. Like I'm over here skydiving. I'm old. I did some laundry. I ate too much food. I took a nap. Don't ask me if I did anything exciting over the weekend. I'm an old fart, and I didn't do anything exciting. Too much excitement could kill a man some of your ages. All right, round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. This is the Dukes of Hazzard. If it premiered this year, this is what it would look like. There's a modern version of Bo and Luke Duke. They're wearing what we call the man buns. I call them douche knots. Got the douche knots up there. Daisy Duke and their Tesla. Looks like a go-kart. And it is a mini Tesla, bright orange, that'd be like the General Lee. But that is what it would look like if the Dukes of Hazzard premiered in 2025. 2 boys with a douche knot. A girl unable to show her entire Daisy Duke leg. We can't even see if she probably got on full jeans there, because we don't want to objectify the women. Don't want to do that. Round around the globe we go, where we steal the memes from no one knows. Ladies and gentlemen, we are fresh out of memes. We have milked the meme machine dry. And so I want to remind you, our charity work, the work the Lord has called us to do, can be found at riverspromise.org. Never in a million years as a kid did I ever imagine that I would be doing work in Africa, but parenthood and adoption and all the things that went into my journey led us to starting Rivers Promise. And I appreciate all that you can do to help us with the charity work today. Here's what you can do. We're about to announce our general mailing list. If you're not on the mailing list, go to riverspromise.org, riverspromise.com, sign up for the email list. We're going to announce that today to the mailing list about helping stock that 5th grade classroom. You guys have done fantastic. There's still time to get involved with that. Also, we want you to get involved with our regular golf tournament experience. Happens every year. But I got to shut up because I can't quit coughing. My mute button's too far away. Anyway, go register for the golf tournament. If you don't register today, I'm going to cough all the show tomorrow. No, just kidding. I jest with you. Riverspromise.com, riverspromise.org. Go sign up for a golf event. It's Friday, September the 5th. Even if you are not a golfer, you're welcome to come to this event. It's really more of a party where a golfing game breaks out. And I also need to tell you there's sponsorship opportunities available on the website. If you'd like to be a sponsor, even if you're out of state, even if you're not a golfer, you can help sponsor. It will give you a lot of credibility and credit at the golf event. Riverspromise.org. And if you can't come, hey, it's a great reason to donate once a year. It's our biggest fundraiser of the year every year. And we hope this year will remain the same. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I mean this from the bottom of my heart. I'll see you tomorrow morning. May God bless you. May God bless America. I am Jimmy Lakey. Peace. I'm out of here.